will we ever have a game like Vanilla WoW up to Cataclysm again, or is it just not what modern game developers think we want? I've personally thought that this was a very apt question given the state of Shadowlands going into Dragonflight.
Depends what people mean when they say they want classic TBC, Wrath, and Cataclysm. Because if what you're saying is that you want those games back, I would be one of those people that say, fuck no. For the love of God, no. They were amazingly fun back when they were current, and my favorite expansion to date is Wrath of the Lich King. Do I want Wrath of the Lich King again today? No. Wrath of the Lich King was great for its time, but it is aged now. MMOs have moved on. Gaming has moved on since then, and bare bones video games are no longer going to cut it, in my opinion, when it comes to the video game industry. Now, with that being said, though, there is something to be said about the philosophy of those expansions. And I think that's where we need to get to. Will we ever see philosophically similar expansions to Wrath up to Cataclysm? Because from a philosophical standpoint, what did those expansions have in common? Freedom. And I don't mean freedom America, fuck yeah. I mean freedom as in the way that you wanted to play the game. If you were a raider, well, you raided. You know, it wasn't difficult. There was nothing else to do. There was the raids and you would do the raids. If you were more casual, there were world quests for you, and the world quests were oftentimes quite interesting. You know, I remember a time where people would every single Sunday rush to Stranglethorn or Booty Bay for the fishing contest, right? And there were actual activities and events in the open world that a lot of casual players really enjoyed doing. Even though by today's standards, and if you look at modern day MMOs, those things would be considered criminally underdeveloped. They were quite good at the time. And that is something that I don't think is lost on modern day video games. If you look at Guild Wars and you look at ESO and you look at Final Fantasy, they've all nailed it to some extent, you know, in varying degrees of success. Final Fantasy is a game that has whatever it is that you like, there is something for you in that game. But it is limited, you know. They don't have 1,000 raids per expansion because they don't just design raids and dungeons. They have the raid, and the raid is 12 bosses. Then they have the Alliance raid, which is usually another 12 bosses. And then they have the Trials, which is usually 3 bosses. And all of that then has its varying difficulty settings. And then in this expansion, they have an Ultimate raid. But then outside of the raiding scene, they also have personal islands coming. They have the housing system. They have the deep dungeon system. You know, they have the chocobo racing, which, by the way, greatest thing in the game, in video gaming history ever. But they also have Triad, if that's your poison, jumping puzzles. So there is a little bit of something for everyone in that game. Treasure hunts and treasure raids, different jobs, the crafting jobs is a game in and of itself. So it's basically a game that's trying to cater to everyone because it's trying to increase the amount of freedom that people have in the game. And that is what I want to see from a game like World of Warcraft, because currently as things stand, it feels like World of Warcraft is the only MMO that is trying to cling to this old school, sort of hardcore-esque kind of video game design, right? It's desperately trying to hold on to this. This is how we've always done it, and this is how we will do it. So we have always focused on dungeons and raids and PvP, and that is what we'll focus on, regardless of how the player base feels about it. Because if WoW was doing everything correctly, it would not be bleeding subscribers. Whether you're enjoying World of Warcraft or not is of no consequence and does not matter. I am happy if you're still loving World of Warcraft. That's great. But it cannot be denied. Like, no one can deny that World of Warcraft is in criminal decline. There is something very wrong with this game. People don't seem to be happy en masse. And I think the reason people aren't happy is that lack of freedom. What do you want to do in World of Warcraft? Well, if you don't want to raid or dungeon or PvP, you are kind of fucked, right? Because that's the only content there is. And this is where people will immediately come at me and say, what about transmog? And what about pets? And what about mount farms? And it's like, yeah, where do you farm all of those things? In all dungeons and raids. So, I rest my fucking case, right? Basically, dungeons and raids is everything in this game. And you can either farm the old ones or you can farm the new ones, but everything is sort of built around these instanced pieces of content of dungeons and raids. And WoW really needs to catch up right now. They really need to figure out how do we get into the 21st century here and actually provide people with good, decent content. What would your take be, Moni?
Well, actually, I have a rebuttal from the from Ace, who actually asked the question.
All right.
He had said, if a game can capture the same feel with quests and in-zone stories, as well as modern commodities like player housing or something else.
Yeah.
So basically, can we recreate the experience, so to speak, of more of freedom and all that with quests, like even world quests, I'd say, zone stories, but also incorporating player housing? Like, do they necessarily have to be separate?
Let me just make sure I understand the question. Is he asking, should every activity be incorporated with every other activity within the game?
I'd say, given his first question, I would say no. Just because, like we had pointed out, from Vanilla to Cataclysm, the feel of the game was more freedom, whereas modern games post, he says no, that it shouldn't be, that it shouldn't all be interconnected. But is there some way that using the tools we have at hand and other tools yet to be implemented, can we get back to that feel of Vanilla through Cataclysm, of that freedom?
Oh, yes. It would not even be hard. The truth is that all of that content is already in WoW, you know? It's not like that content has gone away. There are garrisons, and if you did a little bit of work on the garrisons, and you gave a little bit more cosmetic choice on a garrison, garrisons could absolutely come back as a quote-unquote makeshift housing system. The farm in Mist of Pandaria can also be brought back and be given to players as a new piece of content that is old but actually new in its application. With a little bit of work, just a little bit of work would actually go a long way towards that. Torghast can absolutely be implemented as a very casual friendly way of unlocking transmogs and pets and mounts and all the rest of it, with, again, a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of work. The dragon riding system, I think, is going to hit quite a high note of success because it is so not alt-friendly, but casual-friendly, right? Because for casuals, it might be fun grinding out the different flight cosmetics, as well as the learning how to fly and getting better at flying and stuff like that. So I don't think the nice thing about the casual audience is it's not hard to keep them happy. Casual players require much less in order to be very happy with just doing things out in the world. And I genuinely think Blizzard could just lean into that a little bit harder, and it would be well on its fucking way to being a good, decent experience for a lot of people.
Speaking of casual,